Welcome to Unlocking Moves, the podcast where we're going to cover the key decision points and pivotal moments that really change the trajectory of successful entrepreneurs. We're going to tell stories, and we're going to be very authentic about this. We want to hear not just the glory stories, but also the gory stories. Because as I like to say, the bigger the shit show, the bigger the lesson. Speaking of unlocking moves, my guest today has a list a mile long. Adam Contos, you bought illegal drugs on the street for 2 years. What the hell was that about?
Hey, Kurt, it's great to be here. Yeah, that was one of my pivotal times in my career. I was an undercover narcotics agent, so everybody knows it. I wasn't illegally buying illegal drugs. I was legally buying illegal drugs during that time. So yeah, that's actually where I learned sales. I went to the DEA drug agent school, and they would drop us in the middle of a neighborhood and say, go meet people and learn how to buy something from them. So that's where I learned how to make friends, gain trust, overcome challenges, and have a transaction with somebody.
I love it. When I first teed up the question, it was you were selling illegal drugs, which is probably frowned upon a bit. Hey, as you guys can see, my guest today is Adam Contos. He is real, he's authentic, and he's a great guest. And he's got a great bio. I'm not going to read the bio, but I will tell you that he was a college dropout twice. He was a former street cop, a former narcotics agent, as you just heard, a former SWAT commander, and grew over an 18-year career to be the CEO of a very large public company, RE/MAX. Adam, thank you so much for being here today.
It's good to see you again, my friend.
Well, Unlocking Moves is a unique podcast. We're going to have a lot of fun with it. And I've got to, as you can see, we want to start with some hard-hitting questions, some fun questions. But I got to ask you, you dropped out of school a couple times. You were as we said, a street cop. 18 years later, you're CEO of RE/MAX. You've got to fill in a couple of gaps for me there. What happened? Tell me about some surprises along the way. Tell me a little bit about your journey.
Oh, it was so much fun. I mean, first of all, day after I graduated high school, I was on the bus to go to Marine Corps boot camp. And you see in the movies, the yellow footprints everybody stands on. I stood on those footprints. I became a Marine and did some time in the Marine Corps, got into the reserves, got into law enforcement because that's what my family knew. I'm third generation law enforcement. My brother is still a police officer. And I had this entrepreneurial itch. I knew I wanted to become more, to do more, to make more money, to impact more lives. So I started building businesses in the 90s. I got early on in the internet craze and built an online police supply and government supply company. It was kind of hard doing supply chain and online orders and things like that with archaic thought process during the 90s, paper checks, and then we wanted in the mail and things like that.
Online before there was online, maybe?
That's it. Yeah. I mean, I had my code writer for my website was my sister-in-law, and she's like one of the best. And so overnight she's like, all right, here's your website, go sell some stuff. So I got going with that. And then I flipped it into a consulting company. I was a Homeland Security and counterterrorism trainer and expert in that space. I did a lot of work for the SWAT team in different large malls and school systems and churches and things like that. So started teaching people how not to get killed while doing their job. And the real estate industry liked that. I created a program for them. And my consulting company was going great. I had the best job in law enforcement. I was a SWAT commander. All I did was go to fun calls and had my tight team of SWAT officers. And then the founder of RE/MAX said, why don't you come work for me? I said, well, I have to shut down my business and I have to leave the best job in law enforcement. He said, yeah. And let's see what we can make. So I quit my job. I went into working with RE/MAX, working directly with the franchisees on a business consulting level, and worked my way up in the organization. We went public.
Wait. I got to take you back just a minute because
Sure.
Quitting your job, something you were comfortable with, something your family had done for years, to go and work for this guy in the real estate business, which you really had never done, it sounds like. Dude, talk to me about that decision process, because I know I've got a lot of our listeners are wrestling with something themselves with their own career.
Yeah, you want to talk about unlocking moves. I mean, this is like, it's that rusty bolt you're trying to break loose. So it takes a lot of elbow grease and a lot of, from the heart and moments of reflection, things like that, to make a big move like that in life. I was giving up a lot. I was making a great deal of money I had a fun job in law enforcement. I loved what I did. And I was a leader. I was a lieutenant commander in the agency, awesome agency, still is, and I'm still affiliated with them. But I knew I could do more. I knew I could go out and create greater impact on this planet. And I thought, this is a global real estate franchise company. Why not hop on board and see what I can discover that way? I can always go back and start up my consulting business. I've done it. I've started businesses before, and I could always go back and get back on the SWAT team and do that again. So I did have a little bit of a comfort knowing I could go back and start things over again. But I also had this itch for opportunity to try and prove myself to be better every day. So, I said, I'm going to take the leap of faith and I'm going to go. And what I found is that the civilian world is very hard work also. I was getting shot at for a living and I'm like, God, this is stressful. So, let's make the best of it and see where we can take it. So ended up there.
If you're just joining us on Unlocking Moves, today's episode is brought to you as usual by HireBetter, the strategic talent partner for growth-minded entrepreneurs everywhere. I've got a lot of questions for you, but you just framed up something that I wanted to ask you about this book, Start With a Win. I've got to ask you why you wrote the book, but there's a couple of things in here. First of all, I like about the book, it's a thin bind. So it was easy read for my, fifth grade South Louisiana education. And it's got big words. So like not big words, like complicated words, but big font, let's say that. But there's a chapter in here where you talk about Party with the Beast.
Yes.
And that chapter really resonated with me. And I think it's exactly what you're talking about when you made this unlocking move. Tell me about Party with the Beast and how it ties in with what you just described.
Thanks, Kurt. And Party with the Beast is dedicated to a recently passed amazing SWAT commander, Bruce, who was kind of my mentor in leadership in the SWAT space. Bruce told me one time about this beast that's in all of us. And I heard him talk about it to myself and my team at the beginning of an operation. There's a beast inside of all of us, and that beast is fear. It is doubt. It is overwhelm. It is wondering whether or not we can execute the way that we have designed ourselves to execute, be that a SWAT operation, be it a professional dancer, a football player, an executive, an entrepreneur, whatever. We know what we need to do. But the beast on the other side of that door is that monster that causes us hesitation, causes us doubt, causes us to not go do what we need to do. So there's two ways you can look at this beast. You can think of this beast on the other side of this door that you're about to walk through in life. And for us, this was a door on a building where there could be somebody in there shooting at us on the other side of that door. But we knew our jobs and we knew what we had to do and we were equipped and trained to do so. Are we going to hesitate? Because if you hesitate in the SWAT world, you hesitate, you can get killed. In the real life world, you hesitate, you can miss opportunities or you can make improper decisions. So you have to pick something to go with. And we always picked party with that beast. Go in and embrace that beast and be willing to make the moves that you know you can make. Because when you make those moves, that beast becomes your friend and you can harness what's going on in life in order to maximize your future, your potential. Now, think about this. We either love this beast or we are afraid of this beast. I noticed in my research and coming up with this story and talking to Bruce about this when I wrote the book, there's a movie out there that kind of encompasses all of this that Pixar wrote called Monsters, Inc. There's a beast in everybody's life, and it's either scary. It's that monster under your bed or in your closet as a child. We all have it. Or it's that one that you love and embrace and you have fun with and enjoy and laugh and really, really move forward in life with. So we have a choice with that fear. It exists in all of us. We just need to look at it and go, is it going to stop me or is it going to give me that opportunity that I've always been looking for? So party with that beast. Go party with the beast and see what you can do. That's what I did when I made a career change. Party with the beast, buddy.
I love it, man. That's it resonates with me, not only with this podcast and things I want to do with my life, but I'm fired up. Let's effing go is kind of my mentality when I think about I could stand here and you call it analysis paralysis. You could also just go. And sometimes it gets me in trouble. But really, but I'm also confident I can get through it. So I love the party with the beast analogy.
Awesome.
Well, Adam, I know you've probably read Who's Your Mike, which is my book,
Yes.
which is about the employees you're going to meet on your entrepreneurial journey. I wanted to ask you, one of the key thoughts in here is about, there's 5 chapters about legacy people that you've outgrown. The title character is Mike, as you know, who's a bookkeeper turned CFO and is in over his head. And you've kind of outgrown his usefulness in that role. You were 18 years at Remax. You ended up being the CEO. So you defied a lot of the parameters with somebody who you've outgrown. You grew through those ceilings. I want to talk to you a little bit about that, but also if that character that resonates to people you've outgrown, and what do you do with that employee once you've outgrown them? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, this actually takes me even further back into my law enforcement career, because I remember standing at the back window. I remember it clear as day, with a commander in the agency. And I remember him looking at me saying, I'm going to retire. And you're the first one I'm telling. I said, why are you going to retire? Why are you telling me this? He says, because we reach our peaks in life and we need to step aside and help those next to us get even higher in life. And that's what a leader does. A leader recognizes when they've reached their potential, and the people that they've carried with them to their potential through mimicking, through that, that force of influence that we have, that we're capable of as leaders. But we need to look at those people because they're still under momentum moving forward. And you have to step aside sometimes and let them propel themselves past you, and recognize when it's your time to not be there. Because frankly, when you look at like a relay race in life and you're running as fast as you can, they don't slow down to pass the baton to somebody. They pass the baton to that next runner when they're running as fast as they can. This is called building succession in a business. And just like in your book, when you look at building succession, it is up to the leaders there to recognize and not protect. They need to recognize when they are, they've done a great job, but recognize, okay, I'm either going to find a way to unlock future moves and create future leverage, and I'm not going to rely on my past as a crutch to not go any faster. So we have to understand that as a leader. I've seen it happen over and over again. In fact, my mentor and the founder of Remax, he and I had this conversation yesterday about a seminar he went to. I think it was in the 60s or 70s, where he was told something very specific that he told me early on, decades ago in my career. And that was, the people you start with aren't the people you end with. So what you need to recognize, particularly in a lot of different vendor aspects of your business, your banker, your insurance person. And my wife and I just rotated insurance this past week.
Oh, you're going to say it was your wife that you've outgrown. So
no.
But that can happen. But
I'm still trying to catch up to her. So it can happen. Your relationships, you're absolutely right. But ultimately, you take a look at all these different things: your attorney, your CFO, your CEO, your COO, your head of sales. All of these people, they're either getting better or they're anchoring down your business. So it's up to us as the leader in an organization, or the leader of ourselves, if you're part of that organization, to say, am I creating a tailwind or a headwind for where I'm at? If I have a tailwind, is what I mean. If I'm moving this forward as a tailwind, I have the wind at my back and I'm moving this forward, am I benefiting the organization? The answer has to be yes. Are you getting better at what you do every day? Yes or no? We all need to reflect on that. If you're not, why not? Can you? And if the answer is no to that, step out of the way and let somebody else get by. But be transparent about it. Don't hide that and don't protect it, because then you have somebody who's retired on duty. I call them Rod. I talk about this when I do my public speaking. If you know a Rod, and of course there's always a Rod in the room. In fact, it's funny, I was speaking in an organization. Rod was actually the CFO in this one organization I was talking to. If you have a retired on duty, you need to move them out of the way to let those other people run. And he's like, I'm not retired yet. He's one of the greatest guys in the company. Actually, no, he was a head of legal is what I'm like, oh, I just pissed off the head attorney. But it was fun because we had this candid conversation about it and recognized there are some people that need to go. There's some people that need to improve. And there are some people that are just killing it that we need to recognize and allow them to run. But don't let that mic hold you back because, oh, they're my cousin or they're my friend. Or that's the biggest problem in business is people limit their potential by allowing mediocrity or somebody who's going to slow them down.
And you're speaking to the choir on that one. I love it. A couple of things you mentioned that a leader probably needs in order to recognize that in himself and herself, and maybe their team as well. That's humility. That's a lower ego, a high EQ, things like that. And so I stepped aside as CEO of HireBetter a couple of years ago for the very reason that you just described. But I really encourage our listeners to think about their own roles and let's put you in the highest and best use for your own role and bring in others who might be better in those other capacities. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And the reference to the book and Mike. By the way, one of my friends who helped me write the book, his name was Rod. So he's going to take offense to everything you just said.
That's awesome.
I do have a lot of Mike friends who freaking hate me right now by the way, Mike's not a bad guy. It just means you've outgrown him. So I like to be the listener's advocate and ask the questions that I think listeners are dying to ask. And I've got to ask you this question. It's a taboo topic for the most part, but I want to talk about socks in the workplace. And if you can harken back to 2015, you wrote an article about the power of socks in the workplace. So tell me a little bit about that.
Wow. This is an interesting one because I've always been a very uniform human being. Being in the military, being in law enforcement. I mean, I wore black socks and green socks for most of my life, for crying out loud. The whole premise of socks in the workplace comes down to having a conversation piece. So it became really popular to custom print socks, to put weird designs on them. And it was fascinating because I would go to New York a lot, speak to different investor groups, things like that. And you'd start seeing people with shorter pants wearing fancy socks. It became this statement of, I have some creativity. I have something to talk about. Ultimately, what it started was, are you creative enough? And do you have the guts to break out of your professional type shell? And I'm using air quotes when I say professional, because we all try to be prim and proper. We try to be polished. We try to be an exact look of an executive. And that happens to be how we dress a great deal. In fact, when you look at the studies on executive presence, polish and your presentation to people, how they see you before they hear you makes a big difference. You also have to have a personality. And that's where the socks come in. If we all look the same, but we have this hidden, like this superhero uniform underneath our shirt, which in this case is our socks, it gives us something to talk about. So I started wearing these really cool socks. I had a huge sock drawer full of different styles and designs and things like that. And I would just wear a different pair of fun socks. I ended up getting a whole bunch of different Remax socks from all over the world. They started making them all over the world. I would get, like to this day, one of my favorite pairs of socks is my Army Man socks, the little plastic green Army Men that we had when we were little kids. I have a pair of socks with those on them. But ultimately what it boils down to is have an icebreaker. Have something to talk to people about. And it doesn't have to be socks. It could be their hat. It could be their shoes. It could be their glasses. Like producer of my podcast, producer Mark, has these big white Tom Ford framed glasses. They're really cool, but it takes some guts to wear them. So what are your socks is the question. And what are you using or what are you approaching people with as an icebreaker? Because you just can't stand there in the corner of the room and expect life to happen. You have to make it happen. And you have to have just that tiny little pebble that starts the avalanche going down the hill. And that could be your socks. It's just, what are you going to talk about? So that's where the socks came from.
Man, I'm wanting to jump through the screen. I love the thing we talked about earlier with Party with the Beast. And I love just being creative, being yourself, being unique. Don't have to be fit into this little box that everybody else has. So thank you for that. So on unlocking moves, one of the things that one of my lifelong theories and premises and beliefs is that there are certain things along our journey that really can catapult us. They can pivot us. They can help us unlock our success, as I talked about before. So let's talk about yours. We talked a little bit about you going from cop to Remax. That might have been it. What other things do you, as you reflect back, were key unlocking moves for you? And I want to try to inspire our audience.
I've got quite a few of them that really impact me well. I mean, there are different moments, different tragedies, but also different great experiences that you have that allow you to find a greater purpose and a greater self. I would say, so one of the experiences that I was able to have in my MBA program, we went to Vietnam, and we were studying small business. We were studying the dichotomy of small business between Vietnam and Singapore. So you've got essentially kind of a third world communist country, and then you have a first world, not necessarily a constitutional republic, but kind of, that it has freedoms, but is very heavily regulated by law, but also very heavily regulated in setting standards to get people to do things. So looking at some of the businesses with electronic walls that you go draw on and things like that, and into indoor gardens and things like that in Singapore. But we ended up in Vietnam at a entrepreneurial business out in a rice paddy. And it was this shed that was falling apart, and they manufactured electronics for automotives, for like speakers and radio systems and things like that. And it was all handicapped people working at this. They were very chastised by society and set aside, but they were out soldering and creating these beautiful like speaker systems and systems for cars. But these people, some of them were in wheelchairs. They couldn't even get across the rice paddy to get to work. Somebody had to carry them. And I looked at it, I was talking to the founder and owner of this, and I said, "Why are you doing this?" And he said, "Because these people are talented and they need opportunities too." And that really touched me. I thought, what are we not recognizing in people because we built society a certain way? And how do we recognize the opportunity and the potential in people? Because human beings are amazing creatures, and they all have this ability to find that lever in life. And he found some electronic geniuses that he had to carry to work across this rice paddy. And I'm going, this is fascinating. It just had a major impact on me. So when looking at potential employees or entrepreneurs or people who have an opportunity, don't look at what they look like. Look at who they are in their heart, in their mind, and their drive and the capability that they can create, and unlock that. I mean, it's, we use the word unlock a lot in this podcast, obviously, but ultimately what does a coach do? A coach unlocks the potential in a human being. And that was one of those unlock potential moments that I saw that makes me reflect on these different things. Like when I was offered a job at Remax, I'm like, I don't know anything about franchising. They're like, you have potential to learn this and be the best that you can be. Just like when I enrolled in my MBA, I'm like, I dropped out of college twice. You expect me to go get his MBA? They're like, you get it. I went and got straight A's in my MBA. So understand that it's in your heart and in your head. It is not in what you look like or how you have been perceived. So don't let anybody stop you from unlocking your potential this way.
I love it. I love if you're a mentor, you're kind of through your career, in your career, and you can look back and unlock the potential or see the potential in others and give them opportunities. Clearly, your mentor gave you that. And if you're at the point of your life where you're trying to figure out what is next, unleash that beast or party with the beast and see your own potential, because you all have it. We definitely all have it. So I want to ask you one question as we wrap up here, one question that you never get asked, but either you wish they would ask you or kind of wish they wouldn't. I've got a surprise question I might ask you if you're stumped.
One of the things I don't get asked is, what are you afraid of? And I don't get asked that because I've done some really crazy stuff in life. I used to kick doors and blow things up for a living, and I've driven fast. I've gone weird places. I've run around in Africa getting chased by elephants. I mean, if you can think of it, I've done a lot of it. Scuba dive with sharks. I mean, people don't ask me what I'm afraid of. That's one of the big ones.
What are you afraid of? There's always something.
There is always something. What is my beast that I have not partied with yet. And I'll tell you what that is. That is, I'm afraid of failure. And I do hesitate sometimes because I'm afraid of failure. I distract myself sometimes because I'm afraid of failure. And frankly, this is not uncommon. It's called, the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of people are like, am I going to get found out that I'm here and that I shouldn't be here? But ultimately, we all have this fear, this internal fear of something. And I go back to Party with the Beast, but nobody ever asked me, Adam, what's your beast? When I was a little kid, I was afraid to get out of bed in the middle of the night to go down the hall and go to the bathroom because it was dark. I was scared. Yet I spent, 6-8 years of my life chasing bad guys through the darkness. So we all live with, what are you afraid of? I'm afraid that I'm going to fail and let the people down around me. It gets to me in my heart. And I know that I can't please everybody and I can't always be there for everybody. So I need to be as good as I possibly can for those that I can be there for.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing, and thanks for being vulnerable. And you touched on something that is it's prevalent in the entrepreneurial community, where we feel like we're imposters, especially successful. Like, how did I get to be successful? I'm not really that much of anything, right? And so I think a lot of us have that fear, and but we've battled through our own beasts to get to where we are, and all of our listeners and viewers have that opportunity. The question I was going to ask you is a little bit around Chance the Rapper, who I know you guys got a lot of free publicity back with Remax when you mentioned Remax in the song. Don't ask me. You know what? I want to ask you to sing that song. That's what we're going to do here to end the episode. Sing that song.
I don't know that song. Honestly, I don't. I know the story of that song because he met his wife's mom owns a Remax office, and that's where he met his wife. So that was I'll take the publicity, that's for sure. But I don't know the words to the song.
I don't either. We were just talking earlier about your inability to sing, so I wanted to see if
right. Yeah, please don't ask. And I have a great microphone, and I don't want to try and use it for that.
Perfect. Hey, on that note, we're going to wrap this puppy up. Please like and subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you consume your podcast. And Adam, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a blast.
Thanks, Kurt. It's great to be here, and thanks for all that you do.
If you're an entrepreneur and you think you might have outgrown a member of your team, or maybe you've got a mic, as we talked about in Who's Your Mic, check out this quiz at who'syourmic.com/quiz. That's who'syourmic.com/quiz.